Welcome to this Autism Ontario webinar on how to talk about housing, Advocacy 101. My name is Matthew Lay, and as always, I will be your host. Now, there's a few things, well, more than a few things I've learned from doing these Autism Ontario webinars over the past decade. One is that autism is not an illness or a disease. It's not temporary, it's not contagious, it's not caused by vaccines or parenting styles. And very important for today is autism does not go away in adulthood. And we've got some stats about this. In a 2018 provincial survey of 87 adults on the spectrum, we found that opportunities and skills to connect socially with others was a barrier. We found that finding financial security and independence or keeping meaningful employment was a challenge, that there was a societal lack of understanding, and that housing options were a very big deal. And that's why we're talking about this today. As many of you know, adults on the spectrum are underserviced. It's a familiar and similar issue to children, but there's longer wait times, there's more of an absence of services. The disconnect between urban and rural settings is greater, and there are just a number of challenges that face our adults on the spectrum. And so today we are very lucky to have with us Linda Jeffrey. She's an individual who's established a 27-year track record in public service, both at the municipal and provincial levels. She served as city councillor in Brampton for 12 years and later was elected to the Ontario Legislative Assembly for 11 years. While at the province, Linda served as Ontario's Minister of Natural Resources, Minister of Labour, Minister responsible for seniors, Minister of Municipal Affairs, and Housing. And today we are going to talk about advocacy and housing. And Linda, thank you so much for joining us and being with us on the webinar today.
It's my pleasure, Matt.
Before we jump into the topic, I just got a couple more things. First off, guys, my big job here is to keep the conversation moving and get your questions answered. So make sure you ask those questions using the Ask a Question box directly below us. Also, there's a number of resources that we have today. They're located below the slide window, and they help inform our conversation. And if you have any issues, just click on the help button and somebody will be there to assist you. Now, there's a document here that we put up. This is a document that was authored, I understand, by Autism Ontario, and it focuses on the topic we're here to discuss today. What is this document about, and why did you want to make sure that it was the first thing that we looked at before we got into our conversation?
Well, Matthew, I think this is a document that anybody who is in one of the Autism Ontario chapters might recognize. It's something that was put out before the provincial election in 2018, and it gave everybody the tools to go and talk to their presumably future elected official. But today I'm going to use some of the tools that were introduced in this original document. I'm going to focus on housing specific in advocacy. I'm going to give you some background about who you should talk to, why you should talk to them, and some tips on how to begin the conversation and the importance of supporting adults on the spectrum. Because as you said at the very beginning, affordable housing across Canada is in short supply. And although all governments claim they want to build more affordable housing, very, very few of them build them during the term of office that they sit. Why is it difficult? It's very expensive, millions of dollars. They take a long time to build, and they're not sexy subjects. People don't really want to talk about it. So I'm going to talk a bit about the funding models, who pays for it, and if it's a big project, it'll be federal and provincial. Sometimes it's just municipal, but I want to help people understand the process and who to talk to and make it easy for you.
You sat in multiple seats in government, and I think that right now, whether it's what's going on here or how we're influenced by the United States, trust in our elected officials is not exactly at the most all-time high. I would imagine for many people going to speak to an elected official is a daunting task, and we're going to get into that. But in your experience sitting amongst other lawmakers in this country, do you find that generally they are open to citizens, coming in and advocating the way we're going to talk about today? That they want to hear from us?
I think they do. And I think you have an obligation to find out who your elected official is, get to know them, understand they have all different kinds of backgrounds. When I first started, when I got to the province, I wasn't a political figure. I didn't know how to get things done at Queen's Park. I learned over time. And what I recommended to my residents is to come in on a regular basis. I called it a well baby visit. Just as you go to see your family doctor on a regular basis and measure and see how things are going, try not to go and see your elected official when you're in a crisis. You're not at your best. They're not at their best. And they don't understand your issue. Most elected officials, I would say there's very few that would have experience with anyone who is on the spectrum and wouldn't know exactly what you would need. So help them understand your issue and develop a relationship. And today I'm going to use another tool that was offered by Autism Ontario back in 2018. I think it was their supportive housing series, is to give you a sense of a good story, a positive story about people who did find housing, to give you the incentive and the belief that this is possible and you can do it.
Okay, so this is a series of videos that Autism Ontario produced. We're going to show you one of those videos now. There's a couple more available in the resource section if you want to explore that after the webinar. So let's go ahead and we'll roll that clip.
My name is Chris. Welcome to my home.
Almost from the beginning, we still kept in mind, okay, life is going to be, you're going to graduate high school, you're going to go to college, and then you're going to live by yourself. As Chris was going through high school and his brother was going through high school, it was that any time it came up in conversation, well, when you have a place of your own. Having that philosophy from the very word go really made it important to do.
I was living in an apartment with someone. It went well at first, but then went downhill.
He moved out of the apartment and moved back in with us and clearly was not happy. And then we started looking for a house for him.
I chose this house because, well, for one, I like it. The best parts of living alone is that I can do pretty much anything I want to do whenever I want to do it.
Financially, be realistic about what housing costs. Subsidised housing is great, but a 10-year wait list just isn't going to work. Don't go with the mindset that this isn't going to happen, so that they're never going to be independent. Teach them to be independent and they'll surprise you. Learn to become a really good advocate for the person that you're working with, and don't expect the systems will all just fall into place, because it won't. You have to go out there and find what works.
Definitely a feel-good story. We all like to do what we want, which is really nice. A few things in that video do pop out though about what we're going to hear to talk about today, which is advocacy, being realistic, as well as these very, very long 10 years for subsidized housing. That sounds pretty incredible to me. So when you see that, I mean, you wanted us to put it in here. What does that say to you, Linda?
I think I want you to get out of it is that it's possible to find the right housing for your loved one. And I want you to feel confident about it. And I want everyone who's watching today who cares about someone who's on the spectrum to know that you're already a very good, effective advocate because you've probably had to navigate the healthcare system or the education system. And as you get through all these systems, you build your confidence, you build knowledge of how the systems work and how to speak to people who make those decisions. So Chris and his family have found something that works for them, and luckily they found it before there was a crisis. And I want people to think about the different kinds of housing opportunities, because you really don't think about it until you're faced with it. And if you can think about it earlier, you have different choices and you can prepare differently. So if you want it in your own community, then you've got to be very specific about it. We all want our family members and those that we love to be included and integrated into our community. But as was said earlier, the wait list, depending where you live in Ontario, can be decades long, unfortunately. So it's never too early to start planning ahead, to be proactive, find out what works best for your family, whether it's a group home, supportive housing, or independent living, which it sounds that's what Chris is living in. So if you don't know the difference, you can find out. A group home can be 2 or 3 people living together with staff support. Those who choose supportive independent living can live in their own apartment or a home, either with a roommate with up to 10 hours of support. How much help does your family member need, son or daughter? Do they need personal care assistance? Are they going to need help with housekeeping? Can they cook? Can they manage transportation? Do they need medication assistance? How about laundry? So these are things that you need to think about in advance. And obviously everybody is different. The video talks about not one size fits all. And we need to start thinking about what those qualities are that you're going to need in the new housing. But some of it can be taught. So if you can help have a conversation about housing, first of all, and then start thinking about the goals and how you can help your family member learn some skills, whether it's washing clothes or cooking, some eggs or toast or something simple to give them that independence, because the issue of housing is complicated. And as I said, not one size fits all. So that's how we begin the conversation.
Okay. So we're going to move on to who should we approach to have this conversation. But one of our audience members has kind of jumped in already on something that I think is a good way of sort of setting this up. And they say that far too often they find that their federal representative is passing the buck to the provincial government when it's clear that the federal government can budget funds for provincial programs such as supportive housing. And I can't ever get a hold of my provincial MPP. What do you do when you find your local representatives passing the buck to a different level of government when it doesn't seem to make sense to this person who clearly understands how things are set up?
Well, the argument that the federal government is passing it on doesn't make sense at all, because right now the government has been making announcements for the last month and a half about creating new affordable housing and giving money to the province to do so. The province can't spend the money without the approval of the federal government, so it is tied to the federal government. They have to meet timelines, budgets, and requirements that the federal government puts in place. How the province rolls that money out and when they roll it out is up to the province, obviously. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I don't usually recommend this, but you can always go and talk to the opposition about this. Your member may not be a member of the government. And their opposition members, say, their housing opposition member, because they all take specialties on, can ask a question in the House about it. They can write letters on your behalf. So this is about nudging people to do their job, to meet with you. If you can't meet with the member, you can meet with their assistant, their chief of staff. But at the end of the day, it's important that they see you. And I'm going to tell you the best time to see them and who you should approach. And it isn't just federal and provincial members. There are many, many people you should approach and get on side, and maybe they'll go with you together. And the pressure will build when you have a larger group coming to see them.
And with advocacy in general, whether it's advocating at the doctor's office or at the school, quite often, especially in this case, we're forced with educating the person on the other side about what's going on. So you see this person anyways seems to understand a little bit about how the money gets doled out for these types of projects. And so, they may be passing the buck, but it may be part of your job in this process to sort of educate them.
You've got to be
all right.
insistent. You've got to be insistent. I think you got to be persistent. And, a lot of people say about advocacy, it's about who you know. It's not that. There's no real trick to successful advocacy. It takes planning. It takes a little bit of hard work, but there's no trick. You got to treat people in government the way you'd like to be treated, with respect and professionally. And, whether you agree with what the government is doing once they're elected, they have the right to make decisions and actions that you disagree with. So, we know how community pressure can make the difference. And certainly in the autism community, we've seen that change over the last year, how government behaves differently when there's pressure. But you need to go and speak to them, ask them for help, and specifically ask them to do something. Don't leave without asking them to recognize World Autism Day, help with the flag raising. Every MPP has a newsletter. Ask to be in their newsletter. Find ways to ask them to do something so the answer can't be no.
Right. Get them to take some action in general.
Yep.
Okay.
Start with that and then go back.
So who do you approach? Like, where do you start? Where's the start of this process?
So right now you have to go and find out who your provincial and federal representatives. So I'll start with the provincial representative. So provincially, there are 124 seats in the legislature. So most people don't know that. And I'm guessing most of the people who are watching today don't know who their provincial representatives. So find out who they are. I'm going to show you a slide now with the Elections Ontario website. And under voting, there's a tab to find your electoral district. And you find your electoral district by entering your postal code. So it's pretty easy, or your concession address. And it'll tell you the name of your provincial member of parliament. So that's your MPP. Once you got their name, go to the Legislative Assembly website and look up their name to find their contact information. Once you find out about them, start reading up about them. Find out if they have a parliamentary role. Are they an assistant? What's their party affiliation? Are they government members or are they opposition? How long have they been in office? What did they do before they got elected? These are all conversation starters when you go to see them. Find out the address of their constituency office. This is where they usually meet constituents in the riding. That means you don't have to go to Toronto to see them. So that's the first start. Find out who your provincial member is. Next slide is the federal representative. Find out who they are. Same system, only this time there's 338 seats in the parliament. These people are MPs, and this will link you to the House of Commons. And you search by their name, their constituency, their postal code, electoral district, and you find out their name. Again, find out about them. Read about their parliamentary roles. Are they an assistant? What's their party affiliation? Are they government members or opposition? Again, find out their constituency address because you don't want to go to Ottawa to go and see them. You can go and see them in your riding where it's convenient for you.
How much time do MPs or MPPs spend in Toronto or Ottawa versus their home ridings and constituencies?
Well, for MPPs, they work Monday to Thursday, and they usually spend Friday, Saturday, Sunday in their constituency office. Most cannot drive back and forth to Queen's Park if they're, an MPP. Some fly home on the weekends so that they can do events in their ridings. But all federal and provincial have constituency weeks. Those are the weeks that they set aside only for meetings with constituents. So you will know ahead of time, and we're going to give you the link so that you can see when they're sitting. And it's the colored days are the days that they're sitting in the House. Those are the days they're voting on legislation, and you won't get their full attention because they're being whipped to come in and vote on things and to sit and do parliamentary committee work. And obviously they're not traveling the same way they were before, but this is the best way to find out where they are. And the argument, if a staff says, you can't see them, you'll say, well, I know their constituency week is this week, and I'd like an appointment in that period of time.
Does it make sense to meet with special assistants or the like, or should you always hold out and make sure that you're meeting with the actual member?
If the member is a parliamentary assistant, I think, or lower, yes, you should try and meet with them in person. If they're a minister, it's a little harder. Sometimes they have other responsibilities with cabinet. So, but don't feel that you are losing out by meeting somebody who isn't a minister. Or in the case of municipal representatives, if they're not a mayor. I got a lot of work done when I was a backbencher. I could be as annoying as I wanted to be to ministers and got a ton of things done because I was an irritant and they wanted me to go away, so they try and do what I asked them to do. So this is about making sure your local representative speaks for you and that they understand how important those issues are. So the next group that I want to help people get to know is their municipal representative, which is our next slide. That's your city councilor, your regional school trustee, and every place is a little bit different. You might have a reeve who is your representative, but read about them, find out what committees they sit on. You know, you can get a sense of what issues matter to them. If you live in a smaller community, they'll obviously be in the paper frequently. You'll know where they sit on many issues. They usually have an office at City Hall. They don't usually have a constituency office, and you'll get that information on the city's website or the municipality or the regional website. And I want you to know how much sway that councillors have. They have the ability to influence public opinion, to bring diverse issues together, and they have the ability to get other organizations to help you influence decision makers. So municipal and regional usually work together to get provincial dollars, and federal advocacy is done by mayors. Like the Federation of the Canadian Municipality Mayors, they work across Canada, and they go and see the Prime Minister, they go and see ministers. I did that. We talked about affordable housing regularly, and that's really why you're getting the kinds of announcements right now, which are money that municipalities have to spend in a certain period of time and build more affordable housing. So they're moving forward quickly now, and now this is top of subject for people who are in elected office.
So if I understand it correctly, transfer payments or a lot of the money starts at the federal level, then the provincial will decide, I guess, which regions, which municipalities are in most need or whatever it might be. And then it's at the municipal level that it actually gets put into action, gets built or gets,
It can, but it also could go the other way. And I'll tell you about some of those projects. It doesn't have to be top down. And there are ways to make things move more quickly because municipalities own property. School boards own property. Regions own property. And sometimes they have surplus property to their needs. So you can suggest that those properties be used for a different purpose. And that's why it's important to speak to everyone about affordable housing.
We have a comment here before we move on, which is, and you can tell us from your own experience if this is accurate. They say that the more, in their experience, the more individuals approaching MPs and MPPs creates a buzz, and the elected officials discuss who is talking to them and what they're talking about. When they get together in Ottawa or Toronto, they'll actually say, we have a bunch of people talking to us about housing or whatever it might be. Is that your experience? Yeah.
Yes. We know that there's advocacy going on. We sit down in caucus meetings and we'll talk with the premier, and I'm sure the federal members do the same thing and saying, you know what, they keep coming back, and now it's not just them. Now they're coming back with the Board of Trade. Now they're coming back with places of worship. So this group is very large, and they're getting a buzz. They're getting newspaper articles. They're holding meetings. So they'll say, you know, what can we do for this group? Can we include something in our next budget? So those are it's the positive way to say, you know what, they keep coming back and I don't know what to tell them. So this is the place where a lot of MPPs who don't know how to do the job or don't know what to do next to help them will raise the issue. So yes, it never hurts that they're talking to each other and they can feel that there's some pressure building in the community, that this is something that more than one parent wants. Okay. So this is the slide about how to get started. This is the fun part. I always like to bring muffins or cookies. You know, anything that you can bring that sweetens the conversation is good. I realize right now that we're in COVID, but there are lots of ways to be pleasant, to be nice, and so. A meeting like this, it reminds me of when I used to go to IPRC meetings, the Identification Review and Placement Committee meetings at the Board of Education. I used to bring a picture of my son. Bring pictures if you have them of your adult son that needs some housing. You can tell them something fun, you know, something that they love to do. Personalize it. This is not a widget. This is a person, and every person that we're talking about needs that advocate. As I said earlier, invite them to something, a flag raising, tweet about the visit, take a picture with them if you can at their constituency office. something positive that they can realize that came out of it, so that they will welcome you back. And also, when you go in with an open mind. Understand that government may not see the way housing the way you do, may not see this issue as being a crisis because they've never experienced, they've never had to work on it. Ask, listen. Once you understand their goals and their point of view, you can make some realistic suggestions. Not only that will help you, but help them in government and do what they want to do. But understand that building affordable housing for adults with special needs requires the combined effort of a wide variety of people. It's not, that comment, it takes a village. This is one of those, it takes a village. So share it with school trustees, share it with mayors, share it with elected officials, your Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, Lions Club, anybody who's in your neighborhood that cares about the community, that gives back. Get them to be assistants. Talk with immigrant settlement agencies, faith-based organizations. If you join forces with them and they're on your list of people that are coming to see the elected official, it's very powerful. And it's hard to say no. And government likes partnerships. So they can't say you're not, it's just you. You have 5 or 6 other groups with you. It's very, very hard to ignore.
Linda, are there any buzzwords or any specific sort of, call it hot button, words or items that you can bring up to help communicate the housing issues clearly, or I guess to help motivate the elected official?
I don't think there's one trick to this beyond saying, my son is 15 or 16 or 17, and I'm getting older and I'm afraid that I won't be able to take care of my child. I think bringing the emotion and the personal story to the table gets people interested. They also get way more interested the closer they get to an election. So at the beginning of the 4 years, people are shiny and sparkly and happy, and they're in the honeymoon. But as they get closer and closer to the election, they get more and more worried about being reelected. And, if you want to use that technique to say, I know you want to be reelected, and I'd like to work with you on a housing project, obviously next term, because we wouldn't be able to get it going this term, I'd be pleased to work with you. That's the way to say, we're working on something together, and that will make them more interested, because everybody needs volunteers. Everybody needs voters. You need to get back in office. You can't do it from the sidelines. It's easier when you have a seat at the table.
Right. Okay, so you had mentioned this, but we need to know, where is the best time, the best place to get to our elected officials. And then we touched on this a bit earlier on, but let's get into how we make this happen. We got the muffins ready, assuming that we can bring muffins. Where and when do we go see these individuals?
So this is a provincial calendar. So all the green times are when they're in the house. Everything else is when they're outside the house. So with provincial members, every Friday is their constituency day. So that's good to know. So don't try and book them Monday to Thursday. And for members that travel far away, they may be flying out of Toronto on a Friday night or a Thursday night, probably a Thursday night, but know when they're available and check when their constituency weeks are and make sure that you get that time. Do it regularly. I think it's really important to go and see them regularly. So every 6 months, go see them. Whether you have something to ask them or not, get an update, comment on what they're doing and how you can work together. Again, ask them to put something in your newsletter. If you're looking for membership for, your chapter, or you're doing a flag raising, or you're doing a fundraiser, ask them for help. Don't leave without asking them for something. But this is the provincial calendar. And, I wanted to show you that, and the difference between the federal calendar, it's different again. So it's got different days off, different responsibilities, and they sit Monday to Friday. So it's a different ball of wax with this group. So you really need to know when their constituency weeks are, but their whole weeks when they're supposed to be back in their riding. And you'll know they're back because usually there's an announcement being made. If they're in government, they'll be in that government photo and press release. You need to pay attention to what they're doing so that when you go in, you can say, oh, I saw you were doing an announcement about this and that, and can you help us with this issue? It's about acknowledging the work that they're doing and asking them to help you on a housing-specific project. So this is a picture of me. That's me in the middle with my thumb up. And it's a photo taken back in 2013 when I was the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And it's celebrating the construction of affordable housing on the Pan Am Parapan Athletic Village site in Toronto's West Don lands. The games took place in July and August, as you know, of 2015. And in order to host it, they needed to build an athletes' village. So the City of Toronto negotiated that they would build the two buildings with the goal that following the games, that they would get the 253 units afterwards that could be converted into new residential housing with affordable rental homes for families and individuals. This is a really big project, but it happened, and it was as a result of negotiation that the Mayor of Toronto and his council did, because they need more affordable housing. So that's why it's important to talk to municipal councillors, because they can negotiate things. They can make things happen, and they can help you when you don't even know that something's being negotiated. They know behind the scenes because they're purchasing or selling properties, and they can make it a result of an approval. Even if it's a residential subdivision, they can require that some affordable housing be built as a result of an approval of that neighborhood. So don't ever believe that municipal representatives don't matter. They can hold the final key to the approval process. They deal with provincial and federal members all the time, developers who want to get their projects in the ground and need the approval of a councillor and are prepared to negotiate something that could benefit your community in a very significant way.
So clearly you're motivating people here, and there's a lot of questions around, the how, which I think we're addressing. But one of the things that's come up is, to my comment about, get your muffins ready, but not right now, is, are there mechanisms in place in a COVID environment to meet virtually with your members of representatives? There is?
I think, I don't know everybody, but I know that there are in-person meetings in some offices. You just need to make an appointment. Just like if you go to the dentist, you make an appointment. You go in and they have it set up so you're 6 feet apart and you're wearing masks, but you can still talk to them. So I wouldn't say that this is exactly the right time. Particularly after a budget is always the best time to go and see, a member of provincial parliament, which we've just had a budget. I realize everything's focused on COVID, but I think a lot of provincial municipal members would welcome other conversations as well, because they have to think long term. They have to think about particularly why they ran. They wanted to make a difference in their community. They want to make it a better place to live. And sometimes they don't have a specific issue, and you don't know that they're your advocate right away. They may become your advocate after 2 or 3 visits. So put the time in, and don't leave school trustees out either. They have surplus properties across Ontario. As the demographics are changing, schools are becoming empty. They're going to have to sell them. They have to offer it first to a municipality. So that could be the way in. A lot of schools are being converted into lofts and other kinds of housing, but affordable housing is probably the best choice, because a lot of these schools are in areas where there's transit and other community resources that help, libraries and hospitals and all the services that integrate and make a community better and would make the life easier for your adult with autism.
It's interesting you say that. In my community, I'm in Hamilton. We're seeing a number of these old schools being converted into condos with developers coming in from outside the city to make them work.
But Hamilton has also made decisions that say you can build it, but you have to build affordable housing. They've already made that comment.
Oh, really?
And they have it in their official plan. They have it in documents that they put out all the time. So again, if you do your homework, you can find out where Hamilton or any other community has said affordable housing is important to us. Bring those words back to them, remind them what they say, congratulate them on having shown that leadership, and ask them what the next project is that they're going to do that maybe you can help them with.
So is that stuff publicly available on like the municipality website?
Read your newspapers, follow Twitter. You know, I was reading Twitter the other day, and there was one put out by Cam Guthrie, who's the mayor of Guelph, and he said, "We think supportive housing is important. Guelph Council makes $1 million available for forthcoming housing initiatives." They don't have a plan yet, but they've decided they're putting $1 million into it in Guelph. So
wow.
I just discovered that on Twitter, and you know what? You can discover it too. And these are some of the communities that are showing leadership: London, Windsor, Ottawa, Kitchener, Sault Ste. Marie, and others. They are all being very active. Part of this package that we're giving out today, I put in about 9 links of articles in the last month and a half on affordable housing. There are people who are converting church properties into affordable housing. There are people building modular homes, tiny homes. There are communities that are showing great leadership. There are communities converting golf courses into affordable housing, not popular with the neighbors, but it shows great courage on behalf of those elected officials to do something that might upset somebody who would vote for them, to do what they see as a huge, to start building something to address that huge need that is across Ontario, that families are struggling with, that they can't afford the regular rent, and they need someone to step in and help them.
So we've got a bunch of comments here coming in, one of which is someone suggesting that stories versus the stories versus the buzzword, that the personal stories really work. And they also suggested finding others to go in with. So you're not just going in by yourself, you find 3 or 4 other families in the same boat and go in. Do you recommend that as a strategy if it's at all possible?
Yes. Telling stories matters more than you can imagine because people remember them. I can tell you that I used to write editorials when I was an MPP, and I remember writing a story, and I referenced my godmother in it, and I talked about the values that she instilled on me and talked about the work that I was doing. I went and saw my hairdresser probably a month and a half later, and somebody in the salon said to me, "I love that article that you wrote." She didn't know what it was about, but she remembered the article and my godmother and how I talked about her. So you have no idea how much pictures and stories help, because your local member could be standing in the house someday talking about housing and could say, "You know what? I had this lady come in the other day and she showed me a picture of her son and he's looking for housing," and she can tell the story without giving out too many details that is positive to say, "That's why I support it, because this young man has so much potential, or this young woman has so much potential, that I believe that affordable housing is our responsibility." So this is a good way to do it. I don't know how it works in COVID, excuse me, but I think that, yes, the more, obviously you feel more courageous when somebody comes in with you. If you've never done this before, it does seem challenging, but don't be afraid. These elected officials got there one vote at a time, one door at a time, where they talk to people. They are your representative. They are your voice in the federal government, in the provincial government, in municipal government, at the school board. Help them do their job better. You may not find that right person there. You might find them somewhere else. But it's about building a network of people who agree with you that supportive housing and affordable housing is a right, and your young person deserves it. And how do you make that work better? Because you're willing to work with them.
The person who made that comment suggested trying to set it in this day and age that they've had some success doing it, and it's trying to set up 5 minute, like you actually set the appointments, right? So it's like one person goes in, then the next group, but they're all saying similar things, and so it can resonate 5 stories better than one or the like. This next question is a bit of a loaded one. and it says, but it came up based around something you said earlier. We say 10-year wait period. It's never too early to be thinking about housing, but clearly you can't really do this when your child's 9, expecting for when they're 19, or can you? When should you start advocating for housing? At what child's age would you, if you were a parent today in this situation, when would you start this process?
I think it becomes more personal the closer you get to that deadline, but certainly Autism Ontario has been talking about this with their chapters, and their chapters know that this is an issue. I would say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So depending on how you want to get engaged in this issue, if you see an opportunity in your community that a building is vacant, or that a school is obviously on the verge of being closed, that would be a terrific time to go and talk to that local representative to find out what their plans are and whether or not they're thinking about this issue. Because affordable housing, the issue isn't going to go away. And it's different wherever you live in Ontario. It's a much higher wait list in Toronto, but they brought in 263 in 1 year units. That probably didn't impact the wait list at all. But I can tell you 30 units in a small community makes a heck of a difference. So the sooner you have this conversation, the sooner you find your advocate. And, at the end of the day, maybe this is something you feel so strongly about that you run for office, that it is something that is so important to you that you would put your name on a ballot. That's why many of us run for office. We get mad about something somebody else is doing. I was mad about the healthcare system and the education system when Mike Harris was in office, and I ended up getting, elected. And there are opportunities. I want to tell you one quick story. When I was a regional councillor, we had an agenda, a long agenda that we were dealing with one morning, and some groups came in and talked about the emergency and the urgency of emergency housing for young people. And when I had first got elected, I'd met with the head of the United Way, and I said, I got 4 years to make a difference. I don't know what one thing could I do? And she said, we have no emergency housing anywhere in Brampton. And I said, what do you mean? She said, no, if you're a young person, you have to go to an adult facility or you have to be taken out of town. Well, I said, that's crazy. We're a city of 600,000. We should have that. So that morning I listened to them, and I remembered that conversation that I had months earlier. So we had 2 items on our agenda to study the issue of homelessness. 176,000 was studying it and another 50 for something else. And I asked the chair, can we bring this issue forward? Can we talk about it while this group is here talking to us about an emergency? And I said to my colleagues, do we need to study this anymore, or should we put this 176,000 into a property? I thought the chair was going to have a heart attack, because you're not supposed to do that. But I did it, and it passed. And you know something? About 6 months later, we had an emergency facility for young people. And when I talked to the people at the region, the bureaucratic staff, they said to me, when you started talking about this, we thought when we opened the facility, no one would be there. It was full. The 30 beds were filled that first night. So somebody came and gave me advice. They told me we have a problem. I remembered it. Then a group came. Then I saw the money on the table and I put it together. You're not supposed to do it that way, but that's the way it happened. So I'm telling your, audience, our audience, just start. You never know when something could happen that will bring that piece in place that you didn't expect to happen.
And to quote Hamilton, in the room where it happens, right? Like, if you're not having a conversation with folks that can have that effect, it's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Got a question here is, how do we find a wait list for affordable housing? You referenced it. Where do we find that?
It usually will be at your regional government level. They will have the listing as to what affordable housing is out there. That's where most people would go to find affordable housing. The province often quotes it, but it is probably a province-wide number. But I would say your regional government would be the place, and your regional councillor can help you navigate how recent those documents were created. They may change in the course of the year, but some places don't have a long waiting list. Some people, I've heard are 3 or 4 years. That's not unreasonable. But when it becomes a decade, it becomes unimaginable. And, things can change. Like when I was a mayor, we were dealing with the Syrian crisis, refugee crisis. So a lot of the affordable housing was gone, trying to navigate that immediate crisis. And then it probably went back to the normal wait list. But every community is a bit different. And you got to find out the region is the best place. That's where I would start.
Someone's asking that we define what affordable housing means. They feel like it can be very subjective based on experience or perceptions and the like.
Well, I would say that affordable housing is something you can afford with the money that you have. And I would guess that most people who are on ODSP do not have enough money to pay for their housing and food. Housing is the biggest part of their expenses. And they're also trying to navigate whether they can afford medication or transit or glasses or any of those things, those day-to-day things that you need to function and be independent. But I would say that it can be a substantial chunk of what you might receive on ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program. But it depends where you live and, if you live with other people. Your costs will go down if you live in a group setting. And if the more independent you can be, the less costs there will be associated with it.
Okay, we got a bit of a long one here. And maybe this is a little bit too involved, but this person wants to know what happens when you've done what you've said, basically, and you've met with your local MPPs and MPP, you've written 2 letters of support, or they've written 2 letters of support and concern to the government. You go to the media, you cross your T's and dot your I's, but then everything's stopped. Checking in every 6 months, unfortunately, is too long since it's a crisis. What do you recommend?
The only thing I don't recommend is don't pick a fight with the government. It never works, and you need to not be partisan if you can avoid it. No matter who's in government, you've got to work with them. Sometimes even when I was in government, I did things that were probably not ideal. I would talk to the opposition and they would ask questions that would highlight my issue. I'm hoping my boss wasn't listening, the premier at the time. Other things, you can inundate them with faxes. I used to go and talk to firefighters about legislation, and after I talked to them, I'd ask them to fill in a letter to say thank you to the provincial government and the minister for work that they had done with regards to fire suppression, but ask them to do some more. And I think, the premier didn't like getting 300 faxes to his office, so he told me I shouldn't do that anymore. But, this is about being that irritating grain of sand. It's writing letters to your newspaper. It's about showing up wherever your local official is to ask them to help you. If they're not the person, if they're avoiding you and don't want to deal with you, find somebody else. A school trustee can help you. A regional councillor can help you. A mayor can help you. As I said, Cam Guthrie is the mayor of Guelph, and he put out a tweet all of his own. If you're socially media savvy, you can tweet back at him and say, that's a great idea. How can we work together if you live in Guelph? Or you can go to your local official and say, look what Guelph is doing. Lots of times, municipalities like to compete with each other. So if you can say, look what they're doing over there, why aren't we doing it? You've got to find a way to embarrass people or shame them into doing their job. Sometimes that's not ideal, but you've got to be creative, and there are creative ways to do it. Find another group that they do respect. Maybe it's your Chamber of Commerce, your Board of Trade to go with you, or your faith-based leaders. Hard to say no to somebody who's a faith-based leader. If you bring enough of them, and certainly from different groups, you've got a powerhouse. You've got a group that is very hard to say no to.
Well, you can call it shame or you can call it motivation, but regardless, right? Someone's asking if they can put their child on a wait list for affordable housing. Is that how it works?
No, I think you'd have to be talking to somebody at the region. My guess is there's some housing, supportive housing, depending on what your child needed. But I know it's wait lists for adults and families, but I don't know how it works with children. So I'm not the best person to ask, but I would speak to somebody at the region.
What's the difference between housing allowances and affordable housing? Someone had mentioned that housing allowances might move faster.
That's really not what I'm talking about today. There's a budget amount that would be set aside by the province that would be given to everybody. But I'm looking at the bricks and mortar and how to nudge more bricks and mortar projects. As I said, they're expensive. They take a long time to build. And unless you need it, you don't care about it. It's not something that's on your radar. So you need to put it on somebody's radar. And it could be a small project, but or a pilot project. It just needs to be the first project. Get the shovels in the ground. This is like a Habitat for Humanity type project. Everybody wants to be in the picture when you're giving people the keys. You want to get people in at the ground level where they're digging in the dirt and they're nailing the wood and they're putting on the bricks. You need people. You need a village to help this project move forward. You can't do it by yourself, and you aren't the only person that needs it. There are many, many other people that need those kinds of projects.
Well, we got an answer from Autism Ontario here, is that children cannot go on wait lists. Someone here had mentioned that they entered their child at 16. I'm not sure what the rule is, but one place you can go is to Autism Ontario to find that. Another question that we have is this going to be recorded and offered later? Yes, they all are. It'll be available on the Autism Ontario website tomorrow. Please share it with others and get them in and have them come in. The more people that view, the more of these we get to put on. We've got some talk. You've given us a series of resources. What are the best resources? I mean, we've talked about going to the government and the like, but what are the best resources to get educated on this topic? Where would you tell people to go right after this and read, whether they be in our resources that we put together or just other places on the internet?
Well, today I'm talking about how to go and see the people you need to talk to about it. But I would say that you can go and look at your city or regional's website. They usually have something called an official plan, or they have a strategic document that talks about housing, and read up about what they think they're doing, because a lot of times municipalities, regions, provinces, and federal governments have aspirational documents that talk about what they would like to do long term, but that isn't something that you're seeing on the ground. So it's important to know what government thinks they're doing, and that for you to go and say, I know that this is a goal of yours. You've said this is a priority for you, and this is how much housing you want to build. How much have you built, in the last 2 years, and how much do you envision building in the next 2 years? This is about a long-term strategy and getting elected officials to be thinking more on the horizon, because right now most elected officials are thinking week to week. What's the COVID number right now, or how many healthcare dollars have we got? But this is going to be an issue that's going to change over time, and they have to get back to what they do, delivering healthcare and schools and affordable housing. So we have a great opportunity right now that the federal government has put out significant information right now. With regards to affordable housing, they put out a significant dollar amount, and they want cities to spend it now. The challenge is for all municipalities, what's shovel ready? That means, what have you already got planned that we can put the shovels in the ground and start building it immediately? Find out what's shovel ready in your community. You have to do a little bit of homework. And I tell you to get to know your MPP, find out what they did before. Sometimes they were in real estate, and sometimes they owned a small business. Those qualities can all help them in negotiating other kinds of affordable housing opportunities in your community. So it's a bit of everything. You find out, first of all, when you see this elected official, do you sense a connection with them? Are they somebody you can work with over the long term? so that you can come in and say, do you mind if I come back in 6 months to talk to you about this? And would you do this in the interim? So that you say you're going to come back, you give them a job, but you've got to do your homework in between to find out who else they can work with. Sometimes counselors like to work with another member on their council, so you can get two people together working together. They're more powerful. One can move a motion, one can second a motion. You're going to learn a lot about how government works or doesn't work, depending on where you live and who your champion is. But you need an elected champion to help move this forward. And you've got to do the homework to figure out who's that right person. Who do people listen to? That they don't talk about things that aren't important to our community, that they have a good reputation, that they're trusted. And those are the people that you've got to find a way to align yourself with. The other thing is, as I said, faith-based communities are also looking for help in finding affordable housing. Don't not use them because you don't go to that faith-based institution. Find a way, and a lot of faith-based leaders meet together. They have breakfasts once a year, twice a year, and talk about issues. That group could be very helpful and powerful in talking about the need in the community, not only for people on the spectrum, but everybody, which is ideal because then there's a real momentum and a building of energy. But start looking at your city and your regional strategic official plan for starters, and any speeches your mayor has given in the last year. Just do some background checking, and you'll get a trove of information.
Excellent. We're getting a lot of questions about how to apply and the like, and I want to point everyone to the handout section where we've got the Developmental Services Ontario link that's in there. That's something that will help you with understanding the process for applying for affordable housing and the like, as well as, of course, Autism Ontario is your way of navigating services. So just like you do for anything, make sure that you visit the Autism Ontario website, Service Navigation Hub, and then it will assist you in any of these things. We're getting a lot of thank yous, talking about how inspirational today was, which is awesome. So I wanted to make sure you heard that, Linda. And before I start moving into my wrap up, is there anything you'd like to leave this audience with? If you haven't said it already, your moment of Zen, that big thing you want them to take home?
I just want everybody who's watching today and maybe later on, I hope you know you already have the knowledge and you even have the confidence. I want you to know you have the power. You're the strongest advocate for somebody that you care about. There's nobody else that can do this job. And I want you to work with your local representatives, urge them and encourage them to listen to your concerns and to take concrete steps to address this housing crisis and the importance of supporting adults on the spectrum. You have the power. You can do it. I believe in you. I've done it. And if I can do it, so can you.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was a great ending point. Hopefully we'll have you back maybe with some of the people that were on this webinar who decided to go out and take some action. So So with that, we are going to conclude today's proceedings. I want to thank Linda. I want to thank all of you for your participation. We had great questions and comments in the webinar today, which was awesome. A version of this, the recording of this, will be available tomorrow on the Autism Ontario website. Actually, the same link you use to access this, you'll be able to access the archive. And yes, you can share it with friends, family, loved ones, anyone who might find this information informative. The more people we get through the program, the more of these webinars that we're able to put on. And the other way that we're able to put on webinars are through donations. Autism Ontario does have some links on the website where you are able to donate to the cause. This is put on through government funding as well as private donation. And any piece that you're able to give does help us in our mission to educate and inform and influence what's going on in this province and abroad in regards to autism and autism services. So with that, again, thank you so much for your participation. Make sure you click on the handouts and download these resources. If you don't get them today, you can come back to the on-demand and download them there. And I look forward to seeing all of you on our next Autism Ontario event.